Okay, today's lesson covers Unit 5, Lesson 8. This is the last unit before we get our study guide and have our test that concludes Unit 5. We are just getting some additional practice in sketching and solving exponential and logarithmic equations and inequalities. So, that being said, when you do this, okay, sketch and shade the region R enclosed by the graph. So when you are sketching these graphs on our coordinate planes here, I would like to see over here what the key points, if we have any key points that go along with it that we've talked about. So all of that should be review. Just make sure you put your key points on there when you sketch your graph and figure out what region is bounded by the equations. All right, now if you have a piece of paper, turn your paper over and you will find some problems, and we are finding the roots for the given equations. So hopefully you remember from our previous discussions that roots are the same thing as zeros, okay, or solutions of an equation, okay? And what we have to do to find those solutions is to set it equal to 0 and solve it. All right, so we set it equal to 0, and when we set it equal to 0, really what we want to do is factor it. In all of these problems, you're going to be looking for the greatest common factor. And after you find that greatest common factor, you will have two things being multiplied together. So it's like a times b equals 0. And if we know a times b equals 0, then we know that a equals 0 or b equals 0 or both. So that's a very quick overview of what it is we're going to do for each of these problems. So to go back, keep in mind that when you are trying to factor something, okay, so you don't lose track, you want to know how many terms you have on this side of the equation. And a term is anything that is separated by a plus or a minus. So we have a plus sign here, like down here we have a minus sign. Down here, these are all multiplied together until I get right there, and then there's a minus sign. 2 with this bracket. Again, multiplication, there's a plus sign and more multiplication. So when you look at this problem, that means that this is a term plus that term. So I have two terms, and I'm looking for the greatest common factor in those terms. So the greatest, you're looking at these two things, and what do they both have in common? I hope you saw that it's e to the x. And so that means I'm going to take out e to the x. And what I'm going to have left, when I look at this term and I take this away, then what's not highlighted is what I have left, which is x squared plus 2x minus 3. And that means I'm going to carry down my plus sign. And then this term, I take out what I highlighted, and so what I have left is 2x plus 2. And so we're going to clean that up, and that's going to give us e to the x times x squared plus 4x minus 1. So now I'm at this point where I have two things multiplied together to give me 0. So now I'm going to set each one equal to 0. And x squared plus 4x minus 1 equals 0. So now we have to talk about solving this. And a couple of things. Okay, I'm going to tell you a lot of different ways, so hopefully one of those will click with you. You can look at it and say, what can I put in for x and make that 0? This is a number. Remember, this is 2.718, blah, 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 or rounded to 3. So can I raise 3 to a number and make it 0? Or, actually I should come down. You can even do this if you want to. Take the log of both sides. We've talked about that. Okay, ln of e to the x is x. What's the ln of 0? Well, if you put it on your calculator, you're going to find out that it's going to say error, because if you remember from your graph, okay, there's two different things. E to the x here, okay, this particular graph, e to the x looks like this. Boom. Okay, does this thing ever touch the x-axis, which is where it's equal to 0? The answer is no. If you want to look at this one, why can't I take the ln of 0? Why did my calculator tell me it was error? Is because our log function looks like this. And remember that our domain is 0 to infinity, but it doesn't include 0, so you can't take the log of 0. So either way, what's most important, if you get an exponential function equal to 0, not possible, so you get to throw that one out. Okay, so now all we have to do is solve this one. Going back to our previous semester, or Algebra 1, you learned it also. We have several ways of solving a quadratic equation. It's quadratic because I got that 2 right there. It's my highest exponent. I can try to factor, but there are no factors of 1 that subtract to give me 4, so I can't factor. So most people would go to the quadratic formula. But if you've had me in class, you know that I'm a big proponent of completing the square, especially if this number is even. So I'm going to finish completing the square, and that gives me x squared plus 4x plus something. I have to move my 1 to the other side, equals, and I do that by adding 1 since that's minus 1 plus something. And half of 4 is 2. We square it, and I multiply it out over there. So then I factor him. That's x plus 2 quantity squared equals 5. And just a quick refresher, this without the exponent, this without the exponent, and always the sign of the middle term. It'll always factor that way. And so from here, I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and that's going to tell me that x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 5, and I bring my 2 to the other side by subtraction, so it becomes negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. And that is your answer. Okay, one more problem that I did. Hold on 1 second. Okay, one more problem. I'm going to do number 6. So we start off, we're finding those roots. So we already talked about what the terms were. So I have this plus that, because these are all being multiplied together. And I'm looking for what's in common. And so I notice that I have an e to the negative t in both of them, and I have a negative 1 in both of them. But these are inside parentheses in which the 2 is there, so I'm just going to carry that 2 down. So I have 0 equals 2. I'm taking out e to the negative t, and I'm taking out negative 1, and I'm just writing a bracket so you can make sure you understand, that this stuff was still inside. We'll simplify it. And there's my plus sign. So what do I have left here? Okay, they're both highlighted because that was what was in common to both of these. So if I take everything out, okay, I hope you know that anything divided by itself is equal to 1. Okay, um, and again, anyway, if you have trouble with that, come see me and I can tell you more about that. But that's going to be 1, but it helps you to know that you have to have something written here and something written here. So when I take these two out, I'm left with 1 minus t. So we clean that up. The negative and the 2 give me negative 2e to the negative t. And then 1 plus 1, of course, is 2 minus t. Then we take each factor and set it equal to 0. Negative 2e to the minus t equals 0. And 2 minus t equals 0. There's no way to make that exponential function equal to 0, so I'm good there. And my answer is t equals 2. So that was a quick one. And I hope that helps get you started. If you're not here today and if you have any questions, please come see me or email me. Have a great day.